Hello and welcome to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast where we talk about growing tech startups with those who have grown them. Today I'm joined by Sabrina Palme. She is the founder of Palqee, a highly innovative startup in the data privacy space. Sabrina, it's great to have you here today. How's it going so far?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. No worries. I've been really looking forward to this one, Sabrina. So to kick things off for the benefit of our listeners, perhaps do you want to start with a brief kind of intro on who you are, kind of the mission you're working towards and the work you're doing at the moment?
Yes, sure. So yes, as you already kind of introduced me, I'm Sabrina. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Palqee Technologies. And our vision is really to build trusted relationships between businesses and people. And we do that by building intuitive technologies that give you peace of mind about your most important data. And so if you think of Palqee, we are a SaaS startup, and we are in the business of helping people champion compliance with international data protection regulations, such as the GDPR and more. And what I mean with that is we're putting a great focus on engagement, on participation and involvement. One of the biggest pain points for privacy professionals is to get that buy-in, to have people engaged on the topic, because let's face it, if we start talking about the GDPR and data protection, most people just kind of get, very bored very quickly. It's not the most sexy topic to talk about, it's just the truth of it. And so we're putting a great effort and focus on that. And so think about it, when you think of Palqee, think about what Salesforce does for sales, what HubSpot does for marketing is what we want to do with Palqee for data compliance and management.
Cool, perfect. That's a nice, easy way of understanding it as well. And yeah, I know what you mean about data privacy as a topic. It's such an important one, but it's kind of so new and talked about a fair amount, and it's surrounding regulation that sometimes people's eyes tend to roll out of their heads when they hear the words. So appreciate the intro there. I always like to start with a bit of discussion around early life, actually, early career, and kind of how that shaped what you're doing today. So I'm aware from previous conversations you're from Germany originally, and then you made the decision to actually do your MBA in Shanghai in China. So talk to me a little bit around kind of what that decision was for you and the lifestyle sort of culture shift that you had to learn from in that experiance.
Sure. So when I was born,
wow, you're really going back.
No, let's not go that far. So essentially, so there were two parts to it, right? So one was for me to make the decision to do my MBA in the first place, and then the decision to go to China. So that were kind of the two things. And I kind of, I started my career, how I always like to say, on the dark side in marketing about 12 years ago. But knew kind of from the beginning that I really wanted to work, in kind of the innovation startup sphere, potentially in technology. I always kind of wanted to do my own thing. And I felt like I needed to own in more on kind of the business side of things on those skills. And so when I started to look for an MBA, I wasn't particularly looking for a business school that had a great focus on entrepreneurship. And so the business school I found, Halt, really pretty much delivers on that, has a great focus on it. And then on top, they pride themselves to be, very international. So they have campuses around the world. And for me, it was, so even prior to China, I've worked and studied in Spain. I've lived in the US. So I really enjoy living in different countries, learning different languages. I am learning at the moment just for fun Korean. And I really engaged to be kind of in different cultures and environments. And so in that case, it was not something that I said always, oh, I want to go to China. It was more, I'm an opportunist and saw the opportunity of going to China. And I was thinking, well, when will I have the opportunity again? Not just travel to a country like China, but also get to know the culture and know what it's like to live there. And then on top of it, the country, it's one of the driving economic powers in the world today. And so I thought just, this would be a very enriching experience for me. And so that really was then for me the decision. Great. Found the business school I want to do my MBA with, and I found, I have the opportunity to do that in China, so let's do this. So that was pretty much the driving, the decision behind it. And at the end, it really delivered on my expectations and more. I was studying with people from 40 different nationalities together in China, and it's been a great experience. And I'm still, I think it shaped me in many, many different ways, and in a way that I could have never imagined, which also helped me to lead me to be where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the role of a CEO, a founder as well, but the actual job, I suppose, of a CEO is so all-encompassing. You have to work with people across every single department, I guess, sales and product, and there are so many different types of people, I guess, in kind of those departments. So I imagine that experiencing so many different cultures and learning different languages helps you to adapt to the kind of emotional intelligence you need to deal with such a diverse profile of person in your organization.
No, definitely. It has definitely helped. And I think, one of the things that I've taken with me, and it was not something that was very clear from the beginning, but just kind of really crystallized over the last few years, is that, the key takeaways to not be too polarized in your view. So working with, people from different countries, different cultures, it's once again shows you that there is quite often more than one truth to an issue, and there's different ways on how you can approach it. And so what I see today is, and it doesn't matter if you're working in marketing or in data protection and compliance or in recruitment and HR, it's very quickly that when you're surrounded by similar people, similar profession, you very quickly get kind of this funnel view. And you kind of then end up not really having that kind of broader view on things. And then what happens is that you maybe end up not, losing out on opportunities to see a different solution to an issue. And so I think, that really has helped me to, I take my time in shaping an opinion about something, but once I do, I know it's very well founded on different kind of perspectives and views. And then once I know, okay, I have made my mind up, I know how I want to kind of go ahead from here. And it's really something that I've taken away from my experiences, studying in China.
Yeah, cool. Sort of active, out of the box thinking, I suppose, which is something that I think
absolutely.
A lot of people actually lack. So at what point then did you sort of start to become aware of the problems around data, I guess, and privacy, and where did the seeds for the current journey with Palqee first get planted, I suppose?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, it's not like that. I think it's not really that it was a point where it started. I mean, as you've mentioned at the beginning, I myself am from Germany. I think as Germans, we're skeptical people by nature. So, it's even now, it's, cash is king, how we like to say in Germany. People prefer to pay with cash. And it's not so much because they have to hide something, but they say, like, why should I let the bank know everywhere I go? And because essentially when you use your card, the bank knows exactly how you spent your whole day and how you're going about your day. And they say there's no reason to share all of this information. And so it's even now more common to pay in cash in a restaurant rather than with card. I'm not that skeptical anymore in the UK. It's very convenient to pay with my card. And so I think, the whole perception about the value that you get from data privacy is very subjective. So depending on the situation you're in, you value your data privacy differently and you value your data differently. And so I think it was more something that I was always very interested in, even back in the days when I was working in marketing, but then also when I started to work in technology and innovation and kind of seeing how, the power of data and opportunity it offers. And then I think what a lot of people often confuse with data protection is, this thinking like, oh, it means you can't use data, but it's not true. It just means that we are more transparent about it. We are more ethical. We are more responsible in how we're using data, because where there is great opportunity, there is also, great opportunity to use it in a way that's not necessarily most ethical. And so I think certainly with the GDPR, when that took effect, that kind of really pushed me into it. It's not something that I was always, I knew I wanted to work in data compliance. I knew that this is something I'm going to be very passionate about. But with the GDPR really kind of highlighting this and really bringing this into front and center, this conversation, I think that was for me the moment where I was like, okay, I'm really, interested in this topic. And I think there is a lot we need to do to help businesses and people managing data efficiently and ethically moving forward.
Yeah, perfect, fantastic. And so in terms of Palqee itself, then kind of why did you make that decision of, right, now's the time, I'm going to found this company and start this mission and building this product?
Yeah, so it really was kind of out of a personal frustration. So after the MBA, I started to work in innovation and technology. I've worked in startups, with startups, advised family offices and investors on kind of innovative solutions, but also specifically from a kind of data privacy management perspective or highly regulated markets. And so, I realized that you have the regulation, right? And you have your articles that say you have to do this, this, and this. But then how does that actually translate into your day-to-day activities? What does it actually mean for your business? What do you actually have to do? Like, okay, you have to respect the rights to privacy from your customers, but how do I actually translate that into my day-to-day operations? And so that was a massive challenge, still is. And so, and I saw the solutions that were out there were either, okay, very complex, expensive tools or spreadsheets. And I said, well, I want to have something cool like HubSpot, something cool like Salesforce. Why isn't there anything out there? And so that was really kind of the inspiration to have a tool, again, that is engaging, that is collaborative. I'm going to go as far and say, like, can make data privacy exciting, maybe fun. Most people would say, okay, this is never going to happen in my life. But, at least something that you can get people engaged on the topic and help them reduce risks of data breaches and, build resilience against cyber attacks. And so it's so important. And so that was really pretty much the driver for starting Palqee.
Yeah, fantastic. It's it's kind of one of those things, I suppose, for organizations. It's one of the list of 101 things that you have to kind of keep up with and do in the background. So having a solution where it kind of slots into your daily process and it becomes part of your routine is how you're going to manage that in the simplest way and probably the least hassle as well. Right
now what it is at the moment, and it's totally understandable because for most businesses, it's this like, I need to take care of this, I need to, do X, Y, Z, and then you end up having your record of processing activities, you end up having like your fancy policies. They're nice and shiny, but then they end up on a drive somewhere and no one has ever heard about them again, right? Because again, there is still this challenge, how do you actually incorporate that into your day-to-day business? And as you said, if you can actually do that, it's becoming part of your operations, you call it your Priv Ops, then, it's, first of all, it's not this annoying thing that you need to do and you don't just think about it as an expense. And on top of that, you're actually able to do something good for the business because you're building more transparent relationships with your customers, your employees. They're more aware about how they're using data, where they're storing data, how they're accessing it, how they're sharing it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually reducing costs and making your business run more efficiently. But businesses are still in the process of figuring this out. And so there's lots and lots of work to do.
And so it sounds like you've had quite a clear vision of the product from inception, really, because it was solving a personal problem. So have you had any challenges along sort of developing that product? When you've got such a clear, this is what it should look like. Have there been any roadblocks along the way that you've had to deal with to get there?
Yeah, plenty. So daily, no. So, okay. The thing is, as I said, like there's lots of challenges to deal with, which is great. But in a market like this, as you said, data compliance and protection, it's not something new. It's not something that, only started with the GDPR. There were laws around this already before in the EU and the UK. But it's just that with the GDPR, it became front and center. And you see now, businesses around the world following. It's one of the fastest growing industries in the world. If you think about it, just 2 years ago, it was estimated that about 10% of the world population were protected by regulations such as the GDPR. And by next year, it's expected to be 65%.
Wow.
So you see how governments are implementing different regulations, their own version, and in its essence, they're all very similar. But then they have like, differences in the detail. And so it's becoming more and more difficult for businesses to manage that. It's becoming more and more difficult for businesses to stay on top of this. And then you have new innovation coming along, emerging technologies, people being more aware about the use of their data, and all of this stuff happening. And so with Palqee, what we see is that there are almost too many problems to tackle. Every time we speak with our customers and also leads, there are a range of issues and challenges, right? And so as it's almost this, you would think this is a good thing, but it can be challenging as a startup to say, right, so where do we put our focus on? What is the pain point that we are going to solve first that is going to bring the greatest value for our customers? Is it the pain point of finding my data? Is it the pain point of collaboration and engagement? Is it the pain point of managing different regulations and frameworks, right? And then the solution looks very different because the software technology space for data protection is fairly new, of data protection management. And so there is not yet that kind of proven way of doing it, and you just kind of improve on that. It's still figuring out together with our customers what is the best way of doing it. And so it's a very intensive process. We are working very closely with our customers and partners, really listening to their feedback, hearing, okay, hey, this is working, this is not working, to build a solution that works for them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I guess kind of like when your house is in an incredible mess, do you start with the washing up or the hoovering or the bathroom? And that's the first headache, is to actually plan out.
What's your biggest pain point? What bothers you the most? The dirty dishes. I love that comparison. It's a great comparison.
So when you're taking this product to market then, you're speaking with a new prospective lead, for example, to what extent are you finding that either they're saying, oh, wow, we've been waiting for something like this, please give it to us, we know exactly why we need it, as opposed to, it's obviously GDPR is still quite new, compliance is shifting all the time. To what extent are you actually having to educate your prospects on what they need to be doing before they realize what the problems are?
It's a great question, and it's also something that was a learning curve for us. So, with kind of data and protection and compliance and kind of the people who are working with it, first of all, it affects every business. Every business that operates in the EU processes personal data of people living in the EU and UK. And they are different, people have different challenges. And one thing, for instance, that we realized, so with Palqee, we're primarily working with privacy professionals, either who work as external data protection officers, offering services like an external accountant, or internally who have work as an internal data protection officer. And so in their case, usually it's, they know the regulation. So we do not need to tell them, hey, you need to create a record of processing activities, you need to make a data protection impact assessment. They know that. What they need is tools and ways to help them to do that. And right now, in terms of the solutions that are out there, it's still very much like mix and match. There isn't this kind of go-to platform and it can do all of that in one place. And so, we realized there is a lot of education needed, but more around for business owners, for startup founders, helping them understand why they should invest into data protection, not so much for our main target audience, who are privacy professionals, if that makes sense. So it's more about supporting them, helping them, educating the broader public, if you like, on the topic, that then again helps them to make their life and their job easier. And so, and also in terms of product development in that regard, we're going more towards helping them increase productivity and engagement, being able to do everything that you need to do in regards to the GDPR or the LGPD or whichever regulation you need to comply with. And not so much like, hey, this is for Article 10, whatever. So that was a key learning for us and how to go about this.
Right. Okay. Cool. And so, if you were giving advice to someone who is just founding a business for the first time that was going to be data rich, a recruitment business, for example, right, that has people's personal contact information and stuff on, what would your advice be for, right, step one, you're approaching this issue from scratch. Here's how you start on the road to getting on top of it, and instead of letting it get on top of you, basically.
So I get this asked actually quite a bit because we do work quite a lot with startups and founders as well. And here my answer is, and the business-friendly answer I would say is, it depends. And obviously that's maybe not as helpful, but let me explain. So if you are a startup, let's just say you're at idea stage, right? But you're planning to work in a highly regulated market, such as health tech, insurance, fintech, then yes, compliance, data compliance is something that should be part of your development from the very beginning. Because even at the very early stages, your investors, your clients, your partners, everyone will ask, how do you make sure that you keep the data safe? And then on top of that, it's not just from a data protection perspective, but other institutions and other frameworks and regulations that you need to comply with. And so just by doing it from the beginning, you make your life so much easier later down the line, because you will have implemented those what we call privacy by design aspects into your tech stack. So by asking at the beginning, do we need this data? Can we encrypt it? Where is it stored? Are there any regulations around where we should store it? It makes just your life so much easier of having it as part of that idea stage. But now I am aware that for many startups, if they start to think about complying with every aspect of the GDPR before they're actually entering the market, that is maybe an overkill for them. So I think, kind of taking into consideration what kind of industry you're operating in and how much personal data you're processing, and also where it's relevant for you. So the other thing is, for instance, are you a B2C or B2B business? B2C, it's always good to make sure that you cover everything on the customer facing side, right? Be aware about where you're processing data and how you're collecting data from your customers. And in B2B, quite often what we're seeing with scale up specifically is that it becomes very relevant for them for the sales process, right? So they say, actually, I can't sell my solution if I do not show our potential customer that we comply with the GDPR, because their lead, let's just say, the big e-commerce businesses out there, banks, whatever, they make their vendor checks and say like, hey, in order for us to work with you, we need to check whether or not you're compliant with the GDPR. And so it becomes a part of your sales process, and then there's no way around it, right? So I think my advice is, think about your the type of business you're operating, at which stage of the business you're at. In recruitment, for instance, obviously, kind of if you're already established, the first step is always to think about what kind of data do we hold? Where do we hold it? How long do we keep it? Are we aware about these questions? Are we able to answer this? And if not, then it's maybe worth investigating it, because, at the end of the day, you're making sure that you're becoming more resilient against any attacks. And by the time, if you're experiencing an attack, that then always costs you a lot of money, a lot of reputational damage. And so it's worth it to kind of, start looking at that. So the first question is then always, what data do you hold? Who has access to it? Do you know what data you hold? Who you're sharing it with? And if you feel like, no, you don't have answers to those questions, then maybe start there.
Well, that's me scared straight. So it's really, really good advice, and it adds to a plethora of insight that you provided today as well. So we're sort of coming to the end of the time here, unfortunately. I kind of had one final question that I wanted to wrap up with, which is, you've obviously got a great product and you've got a vision of what you want the product to be and the gap in the market that you're slotting into. So from a business perspective, I suppose, what are you looking to achieve with Palqee in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe in terms of growth or market share? Have you got an idea of that?
So I think, similar to what I was saying in terms of, being the Salesforce for sales or HubSpot for marketing, if in 3 to 5 years people say like, okay, we want to be what Palqee is for data compliance management, that would be pretty awesome. I think that's where want to get to. So becoming kind of this go-to platform for great PrivOps, for engagement and collaboration, in building up resilience, building transparency with your customers, and kind of being known for all of those aspects and helping anyone who's using our platform, helping them to achieve that. And so our plan is, for now, our main markets are in the UK and in Brazil. I mean, we do also have some operations in Europe and in the US, but we'll continue to focus on that for the next year or so. But we do have obviously a range of other cool modules and features that we want to bring to Palqee. There is still so much to build, so much to do for our customers. And obviously also then expanding into other markets as well, because as I said, the regulatory landscape, it's growing as crazy. There is so much happening. And so, expanding into other markets, helping people in different countries manage different regulations, I think that's kind of, where we want to go to and want to get to.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, it's really, really exciting, your journey. I'm looking forward to watching it unfold. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Sabrina. It's been a really, really good one. I hope that you've enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. Thanks again for inviting me. It's been great.
No problem. Fantastic. Well, for those of you at home, thank you so much for listening, and tune in next time to Growing Tech Fast.